We're going to see breakthrough developments, most likely in medicine, materials, and other scientific technology problems with quantum AI that we would never see without.
Welcome to today's Solactive Product Talk. My name is 𝗏𝗏, and today we talk with Geir Espeskog, the CEO of Northwind. Welcome to Frankfurt.
Krzysztof, pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me in Frankfurt.
Tell us a bit about yourself and Northwind. Why are we here today?
My name is Geir. I'm Norwegian. I worked in derivatives in London for 10 years. Then I joined BlackRock and helped set up their Nordic ETF business before I moved to Asia and helped drive their business in Asia Pacific when it comes to ETFs. And after 13 years at BlackRock, I started Northwind in 2024. I started together with an old colleague of mine, Chris Vass, also BlackRock, and recently we were joined by Victor Osterberg as well, an industry colleague in ETFs from Flow Traders. And between us, we have 50 years of ETF experience, which I guess is a good thing, but it tells you something about our age as well. And, you know, Northwind is really a thematic research and strategy company. We are the company behind a new brand of ETFs called 𝗏𝗏𝗶𝗏. And 𝗏𝗏𝗶𝗏 is managed by Lunate. So it's 𝗏𝗏𝗶𝗏 ETFs powered by Lunate. And Lunate is an asset manager based in Abu Dhabi. It's an institutional asset manager. They manage 115 billion in assets. And this is their 𝗏𝗏𝗶𝗏𝗏 is a UCITS brand of ETFs focused on thematics.
And maybe tell us a bit about Lunate 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. What is your general broader approach to thematic investment?
Absolutely. So at Northwind, we really have a research-based approach to thematics. And what we try to do is find and identify what we call tailwind themes. And I think it speaks for itself what that tries to do, themes with tailwind. And the way we do that is two parts to it. First, identify the theme. And secondly, when we've identified a theme, what qualifies, then how do we put it together? And those are really important steps that sets us apart, I think, as a new provider. On the first step, we really use, how do we identify themes? We use a TEST framework. TEST stands for Technology, Energy, and Security Triangle. So it's this really interconnected three forces where we look for themes. There's record research and development spend from both governments and for the first time private companies into those three areas, and that's driven by global competition. All our themes are related to that directly or indirectly. Secondly, is really important. How do you then put it together, right? And there we have three steps, principles, I should say. The first one we call active design. Active design means identifying what matters for that theme to find the right securities. So what we're aiming for is theme purity, not necessarily outperformance, but performance. The second step, but then still important, index delivery. We want index delivery, so active design is before, and then once you have the index, you follow it. Second step is concentrated portfolios. Don't over-diversify. We call that true to theme. And the third step is about reducing overlap to the core. Make sure it fits as a nice satellite in your portfolio. Don't overlap too much with the core. Don't overlap too much with other themes that you have there. So it really works well in the portfolio context. We call that an all-weather theme. So those three steps creates satellites that fit really nicely into people's portfolios, we believe.
Okay. And I know today we are here to talk about quantum computing. Let's maybe just dive into quantum computing directly. It is definitely a fascinating concept. Which is around for years, but I think especially recently the conversation has become a lot more tangible, and maybe now is the right time to talk about quantum computing and its place in investors' portfolios, right?
Absolutely. We think so. And look, I mean, everybody talks about AI, and AI was sort of a 15, 20-year overnight success. Quantum computing has been a 45-year plus research development, and we are getting closer, we believe, to this breakthrough moment. And it's a new segment. I mean, people say, "Oh, quantum sounds difficult," but it's basically a new segment in the chip industry, right? Mainly. And what these chips do is what classical chips and computers struggle to do, and that's solving some of the hardest sort of scientific problems we have out there. And we are seeing more frequent breakthroughs, and actually AI is helping to accelerate these breakthroughs as well. So let's call it in 5 years. It's hard to time it exactly. You're going to see quantum processing units, so QPUs, sitting in data centers next to GPUs, to CPUs, and all the accelerators and memory chips. And it's going to go mainstream like that.
And do you feel like currently everything is kind of consumed by AI? And of course, AI and quantum computing, they're probably competing for attention, competing for investors' attention, competing for CapEx attention, of course. Do you feel that they are in competition with each other, or are they both part of, let's say, a broader next generation frontier of tech investment?
Look, I mean, they're definitely very different technologies, and they're complementary. And that's really, really cool. Like I said, quantum computing is being accelerated, or the development of quantum computing chips is being accelerated by AI and GPU technology, right? So they sit side by side. You can't really run quantum computers today without some element of classical computers next to it. And as classical computing becomes more powerful, like we are seeing with AI, quantum computing is also accelerating. The other thing, so that's on the development side. The other thing is that AI is a probabilistic technology, it's a software technology, right? And it's running on GPUs. Quantum computing it's a chip technology, right? And it helps solve science problems predominantly. It helps solve very specific problems that classical computers will typically struggle to do, especially when they get very complex, right? So therefore, what you will see in the future, what we think you will see, and obviously, who knows? We'll find out. I don't have a crystal ball, but the AI will give you, let's say, some probabilistic solutions. We think here are the chemicals that will help solving a certain pharmaceutical problem, like a new medicine or drug or Alzheimer's or whatever, solve for that. Now, what you have in the future, a quantum chip that can actually simulate this. In order to simulate nature processes, meaning atoms, molecules, these are quantum processes, you need a quantum chip. A classical chip cannot, by definition, actually solve a quantum problem. So you're going to get AI going to quantum will test, you get the data back to AI saying this worked or it didn't, here's the output. That will accelerate, for instance, drug development massively, battery technology massively. That is the hope that we are looking for, and that's what the technology is promising. Obviously, we're not quite there yet, but we're making amazing progress.
That's quite interesting. I think it's developing basically next to each other, but also together. And when we look at maybe more tactical investors, would you say that AI is in general the investment theme for the current investment cycle? Let's assume I'm a more tactical investor, short to midterm oriented. Would you say it's a fair assumption to say AI is really the investment theme of the current investment sample, and quantum computing might be of the next investment cycle, maybe a couple of years from now? Do you see or do you expect a similar push?
This is a very volatile segment. It trades on news, breakthrough news, and you don't know when these breakthrough news are coming. There's not that much revenue in the sectors, and when you get pullbacks, and you get some very violent pullbacks, you use that as an opportunity maybe to add a little bit, and that's how I think about it. It's an option for a future technology. Without mentioning companies, there was a similar situation in the GPU market some years ago, and it's not that many years ago, and you saw the phenomenal rise that had for the stocks involved, and that's kind of what we're looking for here as well. You're asking me about timing. People have to decide their own time, but when you decide to buy, just be mindful of, is the exposure you're buying, is it a pure exposure to quantum, or is it diluted in any way? And does it do what it says on the tin? So I think that's important, and that's why we enjoyed working with Solactive and 𝗏𝗏 in designing the quantum basket, so to say, or theme. And I think that's another thing to be aware of. You can pick single stocks here. That's probably the alternative. But because quantum is so many alternative parallel research projects and designs, and there's a whole ecosystem involved, we think it's a good idea not to have too many stocks, but to have at least a few of them, because let's face it, they're probably not all going to survive.
Think about quantum computing. They often think about highly specialized equipment, machinery, laboratories, but realistically, the investment universe is a lot broader than it, right? How would you define that?
Like all these technologies, they sound complicated, but at the end of the day, quantum computing is about identifying a new chip technology, first and foremost. Then there's software and algos. And then there's two sort of complementary sub-segments called communication, which is basically secure communication. And then there's sensing, which is navigation. They all have applications in science, technology, communication, and obviously governments in terms of security. There's a lot of applications there. That's why China has added quantum computing, communication, sensing to their 5-year plan announced in March. The Americans have had a quantum and quantum act in place for 6-7 years already, I think. And they've reiterated that quantum computing and AI is crucial to national security.
And when we look at the index itself, let's look under the bonnet of index construction. Of course, we follow a systematic approach to identify companies active in the quantum computing space. How do we do that on an index level?
Look, the active design element is important to us, right? How do we select securities in each theme? And for quantum computing, we had to solve for a few things. There's no revenue to speak of. The theme changes quite fast, right? So who's leading this year may not be leading next year. So how do you capture that in a relevant way? And then also you have large cap and small cap and mid cap companies all together doing this industry. You want to capture them all without crowding out the small companies. That's where natural language processing and the AI that 𝗏𝗏 offers really does a great job, because it reads all the publicly available information and then ranks securities according to their relevance. And it works brilliantly here. We looked at patents as well, but patents gets more weight to companies that do applications of the technology. You get autos, telcos, banks, airplane makers, et cetera. We think it's too early to include all that downstream stuff in a product like this. We wanted that theme purity. 𝗏𝗏 has been great for that.
In simple words, when investors think about quantum computing today, what's in your view is the one thing they should keep in mind?
Look, this is a long-term structural theme that I think belong in satellite portfolios. You just got to scale it right. This is a new segment within the microchip industry, first and foremost. And in themes like this, if you're not early, you're late. And that's why I think it's all about like selecting the right size for the exposure in your portfolio, but also making sure that it's really designed according to theme purity, so the active design that we talk about, and making sure it's a concentrated basket, because there's not that many quantum listed companies out there. And that secures that the overlap with your existing investments isn't that great. So you get through true diversification. So those are the points I would highlight in this exciting theme.
Geir Espeskog, CEO of Northwind, thanks a lot for joining us today in our office in Frankfurt.
Christoph, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I enjoyed it.
Thanks a lot. And also thanks a lot to all our viewers and listeners out there. Thanks a lot for joining this Solactive Product Talk.